What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Jon Gruden put out a YouTube, which I somehow watched the whole thing, and a headline came out because he said it and he was passionate about it when it was basically he went to Georgia and then he went to Jacksonville and hung out. So it's like 30 minutes at each place. And the Georgia one, I mean, he's addressing the team and he's talking about how he wants to coach again and he would love to coach in the SEC. There was a clip that if you watch when he goes to Jacksonville, he's talking to Tony Baselli, who, if you Google, went to USC, and he said, I need a job. And Baselli said, talk to me late in, like in December, AKA USC. But that, I haven't seen that headline anywhere, but that was a subtle, if I was Lincoln Riley, I'd be like, Tony, what the hell, man? But this Gruden college thing, because the NFL just might be like a Belichick thing. He might not be able to get another job in the NFL. But I wrote down a couple Florida teams, right? Florida State, Florida. I wrote down Auburn, but then I thought, like, would Gruden, I know Auburn has money, go against Alabama. You brought up another program that I have a buddy in Arizona who is an alumni of this school and says, John, you don't realize how much money we have nowadays. And I was like, yeah, that kind of makes some sense.
Tell them who it is.
Arkansas Razorbacks, baby, Pig Suey, because a little bit of the thing with the SEC, it's like Auburn can hire Hugh Freeze when no one else. There's a little renegade nature to some of these programs. Ole Miss, when they hired Lane, and I would put Arkansas in that vein where it's like, all the good would outweigh any couple negative headlines that the New York Times might write. And listen, Jon Gruden, the Raiders were starting to make some progress. He knows what he's doing, and he's got a lot of respect with coaches. Like I think people would come work for him, especially because Arkansas would be cutting these checks to the coordinators and the position coaches. So what's your thought on Jon Gruden? Like I would say it's if you tell me Jon Gruden's a head coach in 2026, I'd say it's like 75% chance in college.
The vibe I'm getting is it is far more likely than not. Yeah, the vibe I'm getting, far more likely than not, he's a head coach somewhere. And if he's not, it will be because the options on the table weren't good enough. So to me, the question's not, can we find programs to offer him a head coach? The question is going to be, is he willing to go work for those programs? So, yeah, I mean, if the Florida State job came open, no-brainer if they offer him. Auburn, I think Auburn's a no-brainer if they offer him. So Florida, obviously. The reason I mentioned Arkansas to you is because I think that situation is very untenable. I think the Sam Pittman experiment maybe in the next 4 months will have run its course, which, again, I hate. One of the most likable guys you can ever hope to be around, but it's not going well up there right now. And I just want to mention 3 companies. One of them is Walmart. One of them is JB Hunt Trucking, Shipping, and one of them is Tyson Chicken. And people who are listening to this may not know this, but all of them are located in Northwest Arkansas. And that is what powers University of Arkansas athletics. So every now and then when you see them, just randomly go hire John Calipari away from Kentucky, well, that's how they do it. It's not because the program is flush with cash. It's because there are big money people hanging around saying, look, we're not going to light our money on fire, but if you sell us on something, there is no check big enough, too big, rather, for us to write. And I think they would do that for Jon Gruden. What you got to be able to do to win in college football is you got to be able to hire a great staff, which I think he could do. You got to be able to acquire talent, which I 100% think he can do. You got to be able to manage a cap now, which he's got a ton of experience in, and he'd bring people in the building to do that. You got to be able to retain players. You got to be very flexible. And this is the part where I think Gruden probably would have a leg up on Belichick. The landscape of college football has been ever-changing and ever-turning recently. And I think he could roll with those changes a lot more readily than maybe someone so set in their ways. But lastly, you got to have an infusion of juice into your fan base and your donor base when you get hired. That Belichick did do that at North Carolina. Huge. And I think Jon Gruden would do that. And so people would turn cartwheels in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and Rogers, Arkansas, and the surrounding area if they were to go get him. And I'm like you. Like, I think it's more likely than not this happens in the next year. I wonder where it's going to be.
You don't need to sink a 30-foot putt to score big this weekend. Just fire up the DraftKings Sportsbook app and take your shot at the green, the kind with dollar signs. Whether you're a diehard golf fan like myself or just in it for the Sunday drama, DraftKings has everything you need to make the round a little more exciting. Live bets, prop plays, and odds boosts. Here's the thing. Are you new to betting on golf? You can bet on the winner. You can bet on a guy to top 5. You can bet on a guy to top 10. My bet last week, I'm going to roll over again. I got Scotty to win, and I parlayed that with Tommy Fleetwood and Ben Griffin, 2 top 10. I think if you want to have a little action on Scotty, he was 1 missed putt away from being in the playoffs. We know Fleetwood's not going to win, but he's going to be in the mix. Ben Griffin is hot right now. One other guy, Cam Young. So between Cam Young, Tommy Fleetwood, and Ben Griffin, I like those guys to top 10. And I think Scotty Scheffler gets it done. So any sort of combination with those guys this week, I'm fired up on. Take your swing at winning some dough this week. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. You know, it's easier. I mean, I don't know, Sam Pittman at this point in time's buyout. It's probably easier to get rid of him than some of these other coaches. And one theme, and you talked about it right before we hit record, is the buyouts of these coaches has gotten more complicated because of paying the players. I mean, I would imagine Brian Kelly's is still massive. Lincoln Riley's is still massive. So while, you know, I think, you know, I'll give Tony Baselli to defend him. He's probably just a little tongue-in-cheek, you know, shooting the shit with having conversation. Yep. But there is some line of truth given that Lincoln hasn't had much success. But are they just going to pay him $60 million to go away when you're also paying the players? Same thing with LSU and the buyout of Brian Kelly. But at those programs, if it does get bad enough, like if you go 7-5, one of those two teams, it would be really, really ugly. And you talk about this all the time, especially in the Big Ten, but specifically the SEC, is everyone thinks they're going to win 9 or 10 games. And it's just, there's not enough wins to go around. So, someone's going to win. Look at USC last year. Like they easily could have won 10, but they won 7. And it's going to happen to one of these teams again, like Sharon Moore. Like he could be way better this year and still barely get to 8, and it kind of looks weird, you know? So I think Gruden, who knows, maybe his options expand a little bit, but the money thing to get these guys to write these huge $50 million is a lot of money to buy a guy out when you also got to pay the players another 20, 25, right?
Especially when the money's real. The money used to not be real. Like, I mean, we're fresh off a world where Texas A&M looked at paying Jimbo Fisher $70 million to not coach, and they said, okay, yeah, we'll do that. Just insane. That will never, ever, ever happen again. Those clauses won't even be in contracts anymore. There's no way. So that's a bygone era already, and that's literally 3 years ago. I believe it is the most under-talked about big story in college football right now, and that is the unwillingness to fire. I mean, almost every head coach is back in the SEC this year. Almost every coordinator is back in the SEC this year. And that's never happened before. And the reason's not because they're all great. The reason is because the standards have changed. The barrier to fire someone has changed because you got to pay real money. And by real money, I mean everyone's all of a sudden got to adhere to a budget because you got to pay the players. You got to pay athletes $20+ million a year. And so where's that going to come from? Well, it comes from that endless pool that you used to spend on water slides and fountains and buyouts. And now you got to actually account for that money. And what's crazy is Florida's the best example of this, man. Florida is still led by Billy Napier. I think Florida could be a wonderful, like, great story this year. Could be a great team. Got a tough schedule, could be a great team. John, Billy Napier's not even the head coach of that team if it's 5 years ago. They fire him mid-season last year, if this is 5 years ago. Instead, they retain him. He pulls the nose up. We find out who DJ Lagway is. They kill it second half of the year. I got them power rated as a top 10 caliber team coming into this year. And it begs the question, how many coaches got fired 1 year too early in the history of college football? And now, how many more offenses, defenses, etc., programs in general will reap the benefit of money being real and their guys being retained and being given more length of rope because they can't afford to be fired? Now, the follow-up to that is, what if your program's totally dead in the water? What if Hugh Freeze is 6-6 again this year at Auburn? Auburn is a place that's had a ton of churn. They're still paying Brian Harsin, by the way. What if the program's just dead on arrival? Recruiting class falls apart. No one wants to be there. What do you do? Do you spend that kind of money again? Because Freeze has got a big buyout, and you're going to have the natives with torches and pitchforks outside the gates. Like, what are you doing with our program? We got to make a move. We got to make a move. Well, you got to spend money to make that move. You got to spend $60 million to fire someone. You got to spend $70 million to go get a new staff. You still got to pay the players, and that's the catch-22. Everybody's dealing with this now, and I just don't think it's being talked about. It's not being picked up enough on the radar yet.